We'll go straight on and welcome Martin Wardle, who's going to give some advice on tax. Thank you. Cheers, Martin.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm normally a fiddler and I normally run around the stage with the mic, but I'll try and stand still for the benefit of everyone, including me. So hi, I'm Martin Wardle. I'm a chartered tax advisor and a landlord. I've been both for, 20 odd years now. I love coming to these events because I was feeling a bit down today, but all the good news that has been fished out. I'm going to go home skipping. I'm sure you all will as well. It never ends, does it? The only consolation will be that guy's already gone, so his phone can't go off again. Sorry, I don't know who he's with, but...
He's waiting for the RAC party's cars over down his exhaust, so we'll give him an excuse.
A little bit of sympathy there, I tell you. Yeah. I'll let you all make your own judgment on whether that's a good excuse. So basically I'm a chartered tax advisor, like I say, and obviously Rachel Reeves stood up and delivered the first Labour budget in a generation almost. And I think it's fair to say that had even a tenth of all of the things that were floated as possible things happened, it would have been carnage. But I'll open by just saying, did Reeves kill off buy to let? And I think the simple answer is, well, she didn't really, did she? There wasn't really a great amount of changes for landlords tax-wise, let's just say. There's plenty of going on anyway, so I don't think they needed to kick us for tax as well. The budget was basically a little bit of the good, the bad and the ugly. If you haven't seen this is recommended viewing. 100% you need to go and watch it straight away. The good, the bad and ugly. Let's go through what happened then. So the good, well, what was the good? Well, just the fact that things didn't really change. That could have got worse. So that's about as good as the good gets. You like that, don't you? This is my biggest fan, by the way. He's loving it so far. Yeah. So capital gains tax unchanged for landlords. Ironically, everybody else is now like us. We were the odd ones. We were the punished ones. We had the highest rate on resi sales. In what can only be described as an unexpected twist, people selling stocks and shares are now paying the same rates as us. Considering they do even less work than landlords, I think that's reasonable. I don't think anyone complained. Section 24 didn't get any worse. So what's that? Well, that's the restriction of finance charges. If you're a higher rate, resi, landlord, individual with a mortgage, Section 24 causes havoc with your tax rates. We still see people with higher than 100% tax rates, which baffles people. I even got a little bit of an online spat with someone on Reddit who turns out worked at the Inland Revenue, who didn't believe my figures, worked them out and confirmed that the example I gave was a 240% tax rate. So this was someone making about £1,000 with a £2,500 bill. It's crazy. If you're one of those people, then you need to know, but I'm going to go on to that as well. Also, there were some reliefs that apply to landlords, things like the deductions that you get, the things you're allowed to claim. Nothing changed. One sneaky way chancellors actually increase tax rates without increasing tax rates is not to change the rate of tax you pay, but to increase the amount of things you pay tax on by removing things you're allowed to claim. That didn't happen. What was the bad? Well, stamp duty's increased. The additional rate was 3%, it's now 5%. I'm not sure that's massive. When the 3% came in originally in 2015, 16, can't think so long ago now, but whenever it came in, the market kind of adjusted fairly quickly, I think. And now if you're a sophisticated landlord buying a house, you build that into your figures. You'll build this into your figures exactly the same. Making tax digital, does everyone know about making tax digital? Quarterly updates coming. This lady looks very happy about it. Well, or are you happy or cold? I can't tell. You're rubbing your hands together. No. So making tax digital, quarterly updates. HMRC are insistent that this isn't a quarterly tax return, but as you have to declare all of your rental income and expenses, which is what you do on a tax return, it's basically a quarterly tax return. From April 26, if your gross income before expenses is over 50k, you're going to have to do a quarterly update. From April 27, if your gross income is over 30 grand, you've got to do a quarterly update. And what Rachel Reeves said is by the end of this government, which might be a couple of weeks based on which paper you read, it's going to be down to £20,000. I will just stress on a little bit of revision on the MTD, that is the gross rent. So if you've got 50 grand's worth of rent and 49 grand's worth of expenses, the 50 is the figure that counts here for MTD qualification. So it's also worth noting that if you've got multiple sources of income, you might, for instance, be an ice cream man and have rental, and each could be 30, the combined 60 would put you into MTD for both sources of income. And you'd have a return or an update per source of income. So that ice cream man I've just mentioned with some rental would have 8 quarterly updates. That's not that they do more than 4 a year, they just do twice 4 times a year. So yeah, ugly, I'm not really sure there was an ugly. I could never figure out which one was ugly in the film. I think it was the Mexican little kid, wasn't it? But there wasn't really any ugly, I don't think, in the budget. So thanks very much, that's been Martin on it. No. Let's, however, because there wasn't a great deal in there, let's go over some revision. Let's cover some of the things I think landlords need to know about anyway. SDLT is still due. Now, why do I mention this? Anyone who's on Instagram, anyone who's on socials, you will have seen almost certainly if you follow property people on there, you'll have seen all of the adverts from people saying, you know, did your house have asbestos when you bought it? Get your stamp duty back. Anyone seen that type of advert? Yeah. It's worth stressing here that the Chartered Institute of Tax, my professional body, the Law Society, which is obviously, you know, the body behind solicitors, and also the HMRC's cases that are being decided, is showing more and more that a house is a dwelling and there's additional rate stamp duty on it. Unless you've got to practically rebuild a house, you probably should be paying the stamp duty, and again, you need to build this in. What's happening though is people are doing, you know, you've got people who, I'll say generously, you know, last week was selling diesel engine, you know, did you have a VW registered between 2009, or they were helping people claim that back. Not long before that, they were possibly selling, I don't know, timeshares and God knows whatever. There's a lot of people just moving into this because it's, you know, it's like a PPI reclaim, easy money. People are getting refunds because of the way the system works. HMRC work on a system called self-assessment. You tell them the answer. What's going on with the lights, by the way? If I could just have green, that would be better. Tax is bad enough without having red over here. So people are getting their refunds. HMRC issue the refunds because the forms are filled in correctly, as in the form has got the right boxes ticked. They just don't match the circumstances. They will then go back to it, inquire into it, ask for the money back. So you might have had £5 refund. You might have paid 40% of that to the claim company. They've got £2. They don't exist when you get the knock from the revenue to say give us the £5 back, plus a penalty, plus interest. So the reason I've said it's still due is it was always due, it probably still is due, just be very careful. And there is basically a case where the judge says a dwelling is a dwelling, always will be a dwelling. And it says, I'm paraphrasing, unless you have to rebuild the house, it probably is suitable for use as a dwelling. And that's the criteria that determines the additional rate SDLT. So just be careful on that. Easy money is never that easy. Companies, so again, if you're buying property today and you're reading literally anything anywhere, or you're speaking to anyone about it, what you'll find is most people just say, surely you're buying in a company. You must be buying in a company. Why aren't you buying in a company? Also, why aren't you transferring all your existing stuff into a company? That's the only way to do it these days. I'm going to go through some figures, and I realise the tax man putting figures on the screen is pretty cliche, but I think it's worth just putting some basic figures on because there isn't a single correct answer or method for working out what you should do with properties. There are a whole host of things, costs, admin, that you need to bear in mind, but the biggest one is what's your plan? Now when I say to landlords, they'll come into me and go, I'm buying 3 properties off someone down the road, he doesn't want to license these properties, so he's selling them before they catch him. Should I put them in a company or not? First of all, I go, get the licenses, and I will, but anyway, what I say is, well, what are you doing with them? Well, I'm going to rent them out. I got that, but what else are you going to do with them? How long for? What's your plan? Are you doing BRRR? Are you buying them really cheap, doing them up? Or are you just going to buy properties ready to go? Are you going to buy a pub and convert it into 6 flats? There isn't a single plan. Landlords are all doing slightly different variations of the same theme. And just like those variations of a theme, whether you should be in a company or not changes depending on what you're doing. So I'm going to go through some simple things that you need to think about. I am going to roll if that's okay. Can you see that? Ish? Yeah. So what I've got here is someone with 60 grand's worth of rental income. They're paying 20 grand's worth of interest and they've got other expenses of 10k. They've got £30,000 profit in cash. At the end of the year, if they did nothing else, they'll have £30,000. Okay? Now, as a basic rate taxpayer, they've got a 20% rate. Most people probably know that. And their take home, for want of a better word, is 24 grand. They lost 20% of 30 grand. Nice and simple. If you're higher rate though, this person is actually on their 20, they're paying £16,000, which is more than half. Now most people think the highest rate of tax is 45%. This is already a higher rate than that. And it's because of the way the interest relief is given. I'm not going to go through the grind on this. If anyone wants to know, you can reach out afterwards and I'll happily fill you in. But because that is a significant difference, what we've actually got is an effective rate here of 53%, which is pretty gnarly, I think you'll agree. What people do is they say, well, hold on, company rate, the highest is 26.5%. That must be better. It's half. It must be better. But this is where plan comes in. What are you doing with the money? If you want the money, then you have to consider how you get the money out of the company. Because once it's in there, you can't just have it. You need to get it out in a formal way. So yes, the company will pay 26.5% initially, but if you want the money out and you're a higher rate taxpayer, which you must be, otherwise you wouldn't have bothered doing this, then what you've actually got is a combined extracted rate of 51.3%. Now, you don't need to know where these figures come from to see that 53 and 51.3 are very close. In other words, you haven't saved any tax. It's a tiny little nominal saving. To the point where I would argue it's definitely not worth doing if you need the money out of the company. So if this is how you live, it's just not worth it because the rates tell you it's not worth it. Are you sharing these slides? Because there's a lady trying to take a photo there. I'm happy for them to be shared. I'm happy to send them as well if you want. Or you can take a photo, I don't mind. So what I mean here is, you know, your take home after extraction is only £600 more than if you didn't bother putting them in. The company will cost you more than £600. The increased mortgage rates will cost you more than £600. The cost of admin on all of this will cost you way more than £600. So if your plan is to put them in and then take the money out because that's how you live, probably don't bother. If your plan is to put half a dozen properties in this year, half a dozen next year, you're 20 and you're going to leave them until you're 60 and you don't need the income, almost certainly go down the company route. Most people are somewhere in between and that's where it gets a bit murky. It's always worth running the numbers. This is only on income though. What happens on sale? People forget that. People don't even think about it. But what happens on sale? So let's say this was a house that we got for 50, we spent 20 grand on it, we remortgaged up to 70, no money down deal, the holy grail, and it worked. But we sell it. We sell it for 100 down the line, okay? We've made 50 grand. As a basic rate taxpayer, if you had nothing else, it's unlikely, but you'd pay 9 grand on that 41 take home, great. higher rate, because we've still got the rate of 24%, which isn't too bad, to be fair, you'd walk with 38. Now the company straight off will pay 26.5%, which is already higher than the 24% you would have paid as an individual. Okay? You haven't got any money yet. That 50 grand is locked in the company, it's not yours. To get it out, as a higher rate taxpayer, you'll lose about 1/3 of that money. The extracted rate, so this 50 grand sale through a company where the company pays the tax and you pay the tax to get it out, you will have a combined rate of 51.3%, the same, which is like nearly double, but it's more than double the 24% you would have paid had you not put it in the company. I'm not expecting you to get this all in one, because a lot of figures, I don't mean that in a condescending way, it did sound a bit condescending, I didn't mean it like that. If you've got a half a dozen properties and you're putting them in a company and they're not making massive rents, I know we've got decent yields in the northeast, but you don't make a fortune, you might not be saving any real money until you sell, at which point you might lose £14,000 on each property you sell. And people forget that. They don't think about the plan. What you do, you look at your plan, you work out what the best thing to do for you is. If you can't, I'm happy to help you go through this. There are still scenarios where you definitely should not go into a company, and there are some where you absolutely should. And I think the challenge is figuring out which one you are. Okay? Just some other, I went really loud there, didn't it? Some other reminders. The furnished holiday let rules, the Conservative government said they were going to abolish these. It was a bit up in the air because it never went through. Labour now went, yeah, we're still going to get rid of these rules. What does this mean? Well, a lot of people moved on to SA, Airbnb, whatever you want to call them, because they weren't affected by the restriction on finance charges. They still got a full deduction for the interest that you paid on the mortgages. So a lot of people went down this way, you got a slightly higher yield, you had more work to do, but it kind of worked out okay. From April 25, you will not get, you'll be affected by the same restriction as normal resi landlords. I haven't done the numbers, but I think for some people this means, well, the advantage you had probably means you no longer have an advantage. It's also worth reminding people that you have VAT on holiday let income as well if the income goes over 90k. A lot of people don't know that. They get the first 2 or 3 and it works like a treat, and they have the next one, and then they realise that they've got to hand over 1/6 of their turnover to the HMRC, and it somehow doesn't work because the neighbouring property is the only property that landlord has. They haven't got to charge VAT. So again, get it right if you're doing it. It can still work, and I know there's people in the room who are doing this, and it still works. You've got to make sure you're getting it right. There's someone in the room who is the current high scorer. I did a series of presentations where I was doing an interactive quiz, which I've spared you from tonight, where I asked 10 questions that all landlords should know. 10 everyday things that landlords need to know. The current record holder is in the room. Do you mind if I share? Or? The current record holder is sitting right there, the guy with the good hair. Which one? You'll have to put your hand up. There's too many good hairdos. Well, it's no, I know it's not you. Yes, sorry. That was. So someone in the room saw that quiz twice, and on the second turn got the highest score I've ever had, which was 7 out of 10. It was the second time we'd seen it. The average. Sorry? Well, I'm happy to go back and check the footage, but it wasn't 10 out of 10, was it? The average score on these everyday questions, which are things like, you put a kitchen in, can you claim tax relief? It's that kind of question. They weren't weird, esoteric questions. And the average score I get on this is 3 out of 10. Now, worryingly, 1/3 of people that were doing this quiz do their own tax returns. So you'd expect them to be 100%, otherwise why aren't they getting help? And the other 1/3 provide all of the information to their accountant or tax advisor for them to fill a form in and submit. Only 1/3 of people generally, and if we did it here, there'll be 1/3 of you who say, I give my advisor everything and let them decide what goes on the form. And that's the way you should be doing it. It doesn't have to be me, but it should be someone. It's a good job it wasn't you again. That's why I've detached this from that. You sort of know, are you? Right, okay then. Right. Who was that? What are people doing then? One of the biggest issues landlords have, of course, is if you can, you pay down your mortgages. Eventually, you're stuck with an asset that's quite hard to get rid of without capital taxes. The problem is, as you age, the value of your estate goes up. You've got inheritance tax problems, which just keep getting bigger. The better you are at your job, the worse that IHT bill is, and the more your growth is going to be eaten away by 40% inheritance tax. Don't forget, trusts can be quite useful. Depending on the size of your portfolio, you might not be able to get rid of them all, but at the moment you can put £325,000 worth of properties into a trust outside of your estate-ish. There's still a bit of inheritance tax, but it's much more efficient. The other advantage is the growth on the property happens out of your estate. So if properties all double, at the moment you lose 40% of that double. If it's out of your estate, the ones in the trust double, but they're not yours anymore, so you don't lose the 40%. They can be really good. One of the main advantages that companies can still work is this idea of family investment companies. They get called all kinds of things, but this is a type of company where you change one of the share classes, and it might be that me and Ted have got 50-50 shares, but we want to include anyone else. Victoria will say, right, as our child. Does this work? It works. You look like you could be our child. I don't know who the surrogate was. I don't know who the surrogate was, but let's run with it. You shouldn't sit right there. You're everything today. So what can you do here? Well, we could say, well, we're going to give you a share in our company where its only value is the future growth of the value of the company. So we've got £1 million worth of stuff in there. All we're doing is giving you the future growth on that, which is really good because it lets us keep the valuable asset mainly, still get dividends, still take income from the company, but protect the future growth. And that is one of the things that I think if you're looking at companies and you're definitely doing it, probably make sure that's part of the remit, because that might outweigh the fact that you're not really saving any tax, but if you're going to save inheritance tax down the line, that can swing it. I haven't got much more, sorry, I haven't done my time now. The long-term trap. Now, we're in an area where this was a real-life example. So the figures on the next slide are a real-life example. This is an issue that occurs if you remortgage your properties, which of course, if you can and you're going to use the money, great. The problem comes in depending on what you do with the money and whether you remember that you did it down the line. This is a real-life example. I was asked by a solicitor to advise on this job, and I should have done this as 2 slides. The top is what's happening. Someone bought some houses down the road in Darlow for 20 grand. At one point, many years ago, at one point, they persuaded a lender that were worth 60 and they remortgaged it to 45. Yeah, so far so good. They're selling them now for 40. Okay? Now I know we're all meant to have gone back to pre-crash highs. We haven't, have we? Who is that? Something? Yeah, we haven't, have we, Kit? So this person's got 5 of these properties, and they're all with Big M, or the mortgage breaks, I can't remember. And they've said, don't worry, we'll let you pay off the 5 grand negative equity over time. We'll be understanding. We'll let you sell the property and just pay the 5 grand back when you can. But because they're being sold for 40 grand and they only cost 20, they've actually got a £4,800 capital gains tax bill on every sale as well. So this person thinks they're releasing money by selling their properties, and they've actually got to fine nearly 10 grand per property they sell. Now you might be sitting thinking, well, how the hell can that be? I thought this guy was a tax advisor, what's he on about? And the problem is the tax on the profit reflects the fact that they took £25,000, if not more, out of the deal on the remortgage. So yes, they're paying tax now, when on the face of it, they're not even getting any money, but it's actually a drag from when they took the money out on the remortgage. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
These are all very good, lots of nods there and a couple of yeses. How do you avoid this? I'm not telling you how to finance your properties, but if you never remortgage to more than the cost of the property, this can't happen. It's physically impossible to happen. However, that's how people used to build portfolios. Yeah? Now, this happened in 2008, 9, 10. There was a lot of people who couldn't afford to sell their properties. They also couldn't meet their mortgage obligations. Now, I think we're in a period where hopefully interest rates are going down, should be less of an issue, but it's definitely worth knowing about. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. If I sneeze, I'll pull the mic, don't worry. Right, I'm just going to mention some ugly. And you might wonder why I'm mentioning these. The ugly in the budget was, of course, employers' national insurance. Yeah, workers won't be affected. Days later, yes, we admit this will all be passed on to workers. Yeah, who are workers? Probably all tenants. There are already employers who are saying the pay award we were going to make in April is not happening now. We can't afford it. So you might be sitting thinking, per Julie, we'll get that rent increase in. We'll wait till the new year. We'll be canny. They're going to get a pay rise anyway, surely. Inflation's still ticking along. This will impact most renters, or probably workers, or not workers, in which case they might not care, but let's just assume you've still got a decent amount of your tenants or workers. It's worth bearing in mind that this is going to hit them. What's the next thing? COVID Commissioner. What the hell? Well, I'm just off on a tangent now. You might not have spotted this, but Rachel Reeves said it was a disgrace that so much money was lost from the system because of fraud during COVID. And she's right, it was staggering. It was a staggering amount of money went. A staggering amount of landlords took bounce back loans who really shouldn't have took bounce back loans. I don't want you to put your hands up. I don't want you to make eye contact. Don't even look at me, I don't care. I'm not judging. What I would say is, if I was a COVID commissioner, the easiest thing they could possibly do is go on Companies House, sick code, property rental, letting management. Did they get a bounce back loan? I'll ask them why they applied. That's be the easiest thing they'll ever do. Beware, if you took a bounce back loan, make sure you did it right, because you probably didn't if you're a landlord. It wasn't for that. And also there's an interesting thing in here. What I thought was very interesting about the budget, for a Labour budget, is the word poverty was mentioned once in something like 90 minutes. It really wasn't like, it wasn't, we're going to lift people, it was, we're going to knock these people down. And also one of the things said is there's just too much fraud, which again I think was unusual for a Labour government. They could have said, yeah, there's too much fraud going on in the benefit system. Don't worry, we're going to introduce the fraud, error and debt bill. That will allow us to look at people's bank accounts without having to get court orders or anything else, which I think is quite an interesting development. I don't know how you all feel about that, but once that's in, that's the kind of power that doesn't feel like it'll be withdrawn once the problem's solved. It feels like the kind of thing where they'll go, where else can we do that? Yeah? Now, I'll just finish by linking to one of you, I think it was you, Victoria, mentioned HMRC as one of the, you had a list of people who might care about licensing. And some guy over there said, why don't you just look at the land registry and licenses? Yeah. From December 2003, HMRC have received every stamp duty land tax form for every purchase and sale of property. That's even easier. The Inland Revenue have already got it. One thing I'm surprised hasn't happened yet, which it would be great for me if you did this, is why when you're looking at licensing, don't you say, and can you also prove that you're HMRC compliant, please? Maybe just give them an idea there, but that's not beyond the realms, is it? You want a license, can you confirm you're following all of the regulations you're meant to, which surely includes declaring your rental income to the Inland Revenue. I can't remember what it was, but a couple of years ago there was a consultation that said if you wanted to be, this might have came in, I think if you wanted to be a dog breeder, you had to prove that you were declaring your income from dog breeding. Is that right? Do you remember that, or?
No, I've run the accountancy firm, and I think that's right.
Yeah. So there was this idea that if you want to be a dog breeder, you've got to prove that you're declaring your income to the Inland Revenue. So again, that's one of those like openings of a door. That'd be very easy for this team here to say, oh, one of the other questions that we now need to ask you is, where's your SA 302 that proves you've declared rental income to the Inland Revenue? Yeah? I was trying to finish on a high, but I'm happy just to say this guy's sorted now, and we won't be getting any more calls. I am hanging around. Please come ask me any questions as you wish. Thank you very much.
Thanks, folks. We are all run just a little bit. We do have a raffle. First